Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are. Today is May 25th, and this is another instance of our monthly bug scrub calls. My name is Maciej, and I'll be your host, replacing Eddie, who's on his journey back from Spain, from KubeCon last week. So, bug scrub. Let's start from the top, sending over to the chat, and let's give everyone a bit to read it through. Opinions?
Seems like a completely different functionality than what we normally do for create.
When I initially wrote that kind of functionality for Create, to be able to create one-offs from a particular cron job, we never expected the ability to change the definition of the cron job in any way. The only capability was to be able to trigger a cron job as is without any modifications. And even that, I was a little bit hesitant to add, but eventually got convinced to push this through. So this particular extension to the current create job would be a precedence, and I'll probably comment and we'll close this as one fix, because that's definitely not something that we want to do in the long run. So I'll leave it open for myself to handle after this call. And in the meantime, let's move on to the next one. Any opinions? I'm not sure about the convert part, how feasible that would be. But I really like the last suggestion from the original author, where he proposes that if this is a known limitation of apply, which it is at this point in time, we could put a warning explaining that we're trying to do a three-way merge on resources with different API versions. That will be a reasonable approach, at least, and it would also explain further errors or problems that users might stumble upon. Obviously, this will only apply to the client-side apply, because the server-side will not be affected with this problem. Also, it does not invoke three-way merge, the server-side apply. So a simple fix is adding the warning if the versions don't match. Anyone interested in picking this one up?
Yeah, you can assign it to me.
Okay.
But I looked at this and I concluded that maybe this is related to the internal conversion of API servers. I don't know the details, but I will dig into further and let's see what I can find.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, so just a little background on the last applied configuration as you approach that problem. So it's one of the reasons that we have to have a three-way merge is that it's impossible to prune fields with apply, client-side apply, unless because of defaulting, it's impossible to know when fields have been removed. And so that's one of the reasons why we have this last applied configuration. It's to give us the intent of what they had and which fields they care about, and that's kind of generalized in the server side apply. But I'm just going over this stuff in my head to try to actually figure out what would or what I think should happen with a conversion during the apply with this last applied configuration. So it's the object that's there as well as the last applied configuration. From that, we can determine which particular fields the user cares about and whether or not they've actually removed some fields. And so we could calculate the patch from that. And then that patch then goes, is applied. Actually, it's the last applied configuration with what's currently being applied. We can calculate the patch, and then the patch goes to the object that's in the cluster.
So
I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
So basically, the issue that he's encountering will happen usually after you upgrade your cluster. So in which case, let's say cron job, because that was recently moved over to V1, you have a pre-existing cron job. So your last applied configuration
V1 beta 1. Yeah.
exactly will be V1 beta 1. Most likely, your resource on the disk will also be V1 beta 1. But the third resource returned by the server will be V1 because that became the default as soon as we promoted to V1.
Okay.
So there are two possibilities, and the question is how we can approach. It's hard to, and it might be a little bit because with both the annotation and the file on disk, converting those over to whatever the server tells you might be tricky because the defaulting will work, you will get different values. But if you have a consistency between the last applied configuration and the file on disk, then most likely requesting the same API version from the server is feasible. So in that case, instead of requesting whatever cron job latest is, you would request a specific version that matches both of these, which up to a point where V1 beta 1 for cron job is served will work for you. Of course, eventually it will stop working for you. So you'll have to deal with faults from that, and that's something that we won't be able to address. And most likely, the apply code would have to account for the fact that, oh, I'm requesting, let's say, the V1 beta 1, but it's not served by the client by the server anymore. In which case, you would fall out. You would fall back to the current behavior and try doing the best effort with a warning that, oh, there is a mismatch.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out what would happen and how to best approach the situation when I have a last apply configuration from before the upgrade. In the meantime, I upgraded to a newer version. My file and the cluster will return newer version than last applied configuration. That's where the situation is a little bit more tricky because yes, you can request from the server older version like we just talked, but converting the file on the disk might cause some troubles. So that's the two different use cases that I can think of and that you would have to look when you will be going through this. That's why the simplest approach that I can think of right out of the bat is what the author proposed, is just documenting this with a warning that, oh, there's a mismatch. So, and the simplest approach to, the simplest solution is to update the API version and force the apply if something fails on it, or in the worst case, a full replace on the
And
resource.
make sure the local apply, what you're applying, has the fields that you want in the correct format.
Yeah, that somehow kinds the most obvious to me. So just remember when you will be looking at it. Awesome. Let's move on to the next one. I think we discussed this one. Sorry. My voice just does not want to cooperate. I think we talked about it last time and we requested additional information, and apparently it looks like we didn't get any.
If it has triage needs information, does it need the needs triage tag?
I would just leave it open. If we stumble upon it next time, I'm willing to close it if there will be no information provided. Okay, let's jump over to the next one. Wait, allowed to wait on a missing field. And I remember okay. So his answer basically aligns with the field is not set. The question is, can we verify that the field actually exists on the resource? It's just empty. If so, then we should most likely be able to wait on it. And something tells me that we should get that information if a field is a proper value.
Yeah, I've been poking around with the JSON pass stuff. I'm pretty sure that the error is different between doesn't exist and like is not possible on the object that you provided.
Yeah, that's what I recall as well, because yeah. Mark, you wanna pick it up?
Yeah, I could look at it.
Okay. What's your GitHub handle?
It's just my M bucket.
Okay, you have it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll I'll assign it myself because it won't let you assign me to it anyway.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I'll mark it as triage accepted. I wonder how we are supposed to remove the neat information. I'll probably remove label. I wonder if there is something like information provided or something like that.
Is it remove dash triage needs dash information?
I wonder. I mean, remove label will work just fine most of the time. I wonder if we have something like no, apparently no.
So is it the case right now that kubectl will wait only, we can only wait on status? And that this would be changing it to wait on a particular field value? Any general field value?
Theoretically, that should be something that we already support, although I might be wrong. It's more about having the ability to wait on a field that is not set, because that seems reasonable. Interesting.
If you want to move on, I'll try to remove that label in the while you're going to the next one.
I mean, I can do that. I was just curious about the command responsible for it. I'll have to dig it up probably afterwards. 2004, so let's move over to the next one. F08.
I tried to reproduce this one, and in reality, it looks to me as a feature, not a bug, because I disconnect the network, and whenever I turn on the network, it reconnects that process and completes its job.
Yeah, that's my assumption as well, because it's hard to tell or how long the network connection will have to be to completely destroy. Have you tried with a longer delay?
Yes, 5 minutes, but not longer than that.
Okay, so after 5 minutes, it still reconnect and continue the operation?
Yeah.
What happens if, for example, you would pick sleep such that it would end between, so I create a sleep for, I don't know, 2 minutes. I'll disconnect for 5 minutes and then return.
Good point. I haven't tried that.
Potentially, I would think that you might have an error because you would try to reconnect to something that does not exist anymore, especially if you say that you should remove your pod afterwards. Or it will return the error code from the pod, in which case, if it succeeds, A0 will be perfectly valid. So I guess the only thing that needs to be checked there is what happens when the delay is a little bit longer than the actual execution time. Will you look into that one, Arda?
Yes, sure. If the error code is other than 0, this is not a bug. If it is 0, we have a bug, right?
It will depend on what the kubectl tells you, because like you said, if it reconnects, fine, whatever happens with it afterwards is the correct code. If in between time the pod ends, we would have to check what happens or what kubectl tells you. Maybe it's not about the exit code, but adding additional information, or that there was some problem and I'm trying to reconnect, or maybe just the fact about it, the information that we're trying to reconnect. Something along those lines would be useful.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. No kind pod registered for P1 in scheme.
He wants an answer from the genius bros.
Yeah, I've noticed that one too. And I'm confused because I'm not 100% sure which part is capital and why would that matter?
And is he saying, are they saying that they're storing this manifest in the Q config?
That's the
Please?
other part which is confusing.
Client command API latest. I think that's the problem, because it's trying to read this manifest as a Q config, and it's not a Q config.
Yeah, it's very likely that that he just messed up his kubectl version, kubeconfig file. Marcus, you want to provide them with an answer?
Yeah,
That
sure.
kubeconfig should be the configuration how to access the cluster, because you're right. It will, the error that he's getting is basically kubeconfig having issues with reading configuration. But at the same time, we could theoretically be a little bit more mindful when providing the information. Instead of giving, oh, we don't know, no put client is registered for version v1. 99% of time we will want to read kubeconfig, so the error could be, instead of no kind, could be turned into no valid kubeconfig configuration file found, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think the only time, I'm trying to think about how I would do this. If a kube config is provided, then assume it's a kube config, like a path to a kube config, and then, but if it's, I guess it would never look at the default location. So I don't know. I'll just look at it. But you're right. A better warning than this would be better.
Probably we would have to just wrap the error, because I'm assuming that in that will be somewhere in the config flags or config parsing logic, because the actual parsing logic will live in the client Go, but the invocation will be in the kubectl side of things, where we read the config. So we could theoretically wrap the error and say no valid kubeconfig found. And then after colon, we could say no kind pod is registered for version v1. So that would be like a detailed information about what was wrong. But the initial error would be, oh, your kubeconfig is just wrong.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next one. JSON path patch. Yeah, I think I understand what he wants to achieve, but honestly, I don't think that we would be. It's basically what he's asking is instead of manually typing the patch file to be able to specify a path to a particular file, a particular field and a value. Why he can just write this thing on his own? I don't expect us to be supporting anything like that. Why not using a JSON patch like what, something like that? Any other thoughts? Okay, I'll comment there and I'll say that we will most likely don't want to support anything like that. Add flag to kubectl top to include CPU, memory, resource request limits for pods and containers.
Is this related to the one we were trying to get information with?
Do you remember the other number?
It was just 1198, the third one down. Is that
I don't think so.
okay?
No, these are the new columns. I think the request sounds like unreasonable, but I don't know.
No, in his case, it was the question was about incorrect information about memory, and this issue is about adding additional information with information divided by requests and limits separately. Not sure what we currently report. Or he's just asking about the ability to specify, to present the spec data from the from those fields. So we would be showing, I don't know, we would, for example, could be showing the current usage slash, well, he's not using slashes, but we could use slash, and then you would be showing requests or limits or both. I'm not kind of, I'll probably add them under single cell. So if you were asking CPU, we would show you the current usage, the requests and the limits, something similar to what when we were showing how many pods are running in a, let's say, deployment. We're showing that there's, for example, 2 out of 4. What he's asking is to be able to see, oh, my pod is using 5 out of the 10 or 15 resources that I assigned it to.
But these limits are optional, right?
Yes.
We are going to show empty if they are not set.
Yes.
Otherwise, we will.
Yeah, we could just not show them. So we would say 15 out of something out of, or we would be saying 15 out of, I don't know, request limits. I would have to check if something similar we're already presenting somewhere else. And that seems like a reasonable addition. I would probably just wait for some more votes towards implementing this kind of functionality, like we usually do for these kind of features. So I'll let it sit here for a bit. Completions. Oh, I see Mark is already on it. Okay, let's hear back from the original author if he's happy with it. It looks like Mark already started looking into it.
So just if I understand that one, sorry just for my own edification. So as long as you do the namespace first, then the completion works.
That's my understanding as well. Or
Okay.
it will pick a namespace, or you will provide the namespace sooner. It can be even at the kubectl level, not the particular command level. Apparently, something is borked because the namespace inside of the set context is shadowing the global namespace. Yeah. We should probably have set context. And you can specify a namespace for a particular context. Oh, I know. I was talking with Tim last week during KubeCon. He's basically complaining about the fact that if you're a newcomer, you download the kubectl, and the first thing that you're going to run is the information that the shorts flag has been deprecated, which is basically the default information that you're going to get from the docs. You might be a little bit confused. So first of all, he was proposing that we document the fact that this deprecation warning is expected because we are in the process of changing how the version is presented. And the second issue that he raised is when you download the first time your kubectl, you might not necessarily have a Kubernetes cluster running, which is a rare case, but for someone new, it will be a thing. So what ends up happening is you run kubectl version, even the short, and then you'll hit the 30-second timeout, after which you'll get the information that, oh, I couldn't find your cluster, because you did not tell me any. So I was talking with Katrina about it last week, and we both agreed that maybe we could try to figure out a way to limit the timeout for that initial connection, so that it's, I don't know, a couple seconds barely, so that you can have a quick turnaround, a quick information back that, oh, I wasn't able to read the server. Alternatively, we could change the docs to tell you to use kubectl version -- short -- client. which will show you just the client version without reaching for the server, and explain that, oh, if you want a full server version, first of all, you need to have one, and then just drop the client / client flag. So something
whenever I'm not connected to a server, I get results immediately. I don't get a 30-second timeout. Is it, which 30-second timeout is that?
I guess honestly, I always have some cluster running, whether that will be our internal CI or something. So I can't tell. I remember talking with Tim about it last week and on Slack, and then I forgot to check it. So it's possible that maybe since you already have a cluster, it will try to ping. It will get an immediate information that it can't. It will fail. But when it tries to reach the localhost 8080, it hangs. I don't know. That's something that we would just have to check.
Yeah, I'm getting that 8080 refused, but I'm getting it immediately.
Okay, so that's an interesting thing. Probably something to check. We were debating an option to do client the default, but I'm very hesitant because most often than not, people will have some cluster, and in most cases, they will want to know the version of both the client and the server together rather than separately. So, yeah, probably a little bit of docs updates. So if anyone is interested in, that could be actually a very simple issue. I'll leave some comments afterwards in that issue. Oh, that's an interesting, because if I remember correctly, I had a similar ask some time ago. Yeah, so basically, our current checks do not support sub-resources. So you can't ask for a particular sub-resource. It is always the main resource that we check. So it's about expanding the current API. I'm not sure if the API supports it, whether it will be both server-side or client-side changes required to push this through. But I can definitely +1 this request, because I do have an internal Bugzilla about the exact same problem.
Just a quick question. So this is going to go through all the rules to see, for the CANI, it's going to, if you do like a V10, it'll tell you the reason, which particular rule allowed it, or if it's blocked, it'll say none of the rules. So it's looking through all of the RBAC, and
it's not necessarily looking through RBAC. What it does, it issues, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Subject review.
Yes, one of these I remember. Let me quickly pull up. But yes, it creates one of those SARS self.
Do those have sub-resources, or can you even specify?
That's the thing that I don't know. Yes, self-subject rules review. So it issues a request over to the server to tell you do we support it, or is it possible that I can have access or not? And in return, you'll get information about which resources you have or not have access. But quickly skimming through self-subject access review and self-subject rules review, I don't think we provide although resource attributes have a sub-resource. So it's possible that it is supported on the server. We just don't use that bit in the
Yeah, I was worried that this might require a lot of work on the server, which might be difficult to get through to
I know what you
access.
mean. Yes. It's definitely something that would be useful. I don't know when or who would want to pick it up. But it's a valid ask, definitely. Although it's more like a feature rather than a bug from what I remember. I'll leave there a comment that this is something that I will want to pursue in the long term. The next one is 1218. Opinions?
So I don't know why they wouldn't be able to use the JSON as output. I mean, maybe they've got code that is easier to understand and parse with XML, but
My thinking is roughly similar. Use JSON or YAML and then convert that to whatever else you will want to have. So I don't expect us to do anything like XMLs.
I agree.
I'll leave there a comment. Okay, so that's mostly the kubectl. We still have about 30 minutes. Let's go through Kubernetes issues. Let me quickly sort by least looked at. Jordan, client-side kubectl apply does not use strategic merge patch info in OpenAPI for unknown types. That's rather our case, but yeah, go ahead, Arda.
I spent some time with this issue, but honestly, I don't understand. As you can see, I commented there, but
So my guess is that I'm not 100% sure what kind of error we are returning here. But I would expect that for an unknown time, we should throw an error as a not registered error, in which case we should try to fall back to OpenAPI information and fall back to the approach that we usually have with CRs, any other CRs, which are not registered in the on the server. So something apparently, I would start with looking at that error being returned here for a type that is a built-in, but a newer version. So Jordan was talking there about PDBs. So probably picking an older version of kubectl and seeing what kind of error you're getting here. Whether it is one that will be similar to CRs and how it's trying to treat it. That's the difference, and that's how it knows which kind of patch it should pick up.
So we don't now use the Open API in this code at all. Right?
We fall back to the JSON patches in those cases.
Yeah, I think what is Antoine saying there? He's saying we always use strategic merge patch for the built-in types and JSON merge for the custom resources. So it's not looking at the Open API. So from what I understand.
Yeah, but even with the JSON patch, we should be able to handle unknown types, I would guess. I'm not sure. That's something that we would need to double check. Are you going to revisit that issue potentially?
definitely. This is
Okay.
6 months ago, and I think I can handle it. I can.
Ping me on
Thank you.
Slack if you hit a wall. We can probably figure
Thanks.
something out.
So just a quick note, Antoine and some of the folks in the API machinery have been updating the Open API so that there's actually an endpoint for V3 now. And yeah, there's been some movement there. If you, and I don't know exactly what that movement is, but there has been some changes in Open API.
Thanks.
Okay, the next one is 106.617. kubectl set fails to output yum sections that don't match.
Just a quick question again. Sorry to bug you guys. I'm trying to learn a little bit more here. So when is it that people use kubectl set? Is it just when you want to update a single field? Like I think it does it for environment variables or for images or
Just playing around or testing stuff.
because I don't
would
see
use it in production, and we were talking about Eddie spent about 5 minutes during the session last week talking about the differences between imperative and declarative commands. And we were pointing a lot of people, like everyone on in that session, to use apply in production. Imperative command, although the learning curve is easy, are definitely not recommended for a production use. So that's definitely something. So, but other than that, I think what he's struggling with is if you use kubectl like this, what it does, it will actually set the image on his pod and print the YAML, which apply probably will be the output will contain information that it got properly modified, and then the output YAML. So what he's missing in here, instead of actually modifying but applying, is dry run. So what he should do is he should kubectl set image mypod -- dry run, and then output. You'll get the output, and then you pipe it into apply. Otherwise, set will invoke the action on the cluster.
Won't he also be applying things like the creation timestamp and other fields that he might not actually care about there? Anyway, yeah, it's no big deal.
Yeah, it will basically, doing something like that will mess a little bit, but I'm pretty convinced that he's just missing the dry run in this kind of situation. I'll leave there a comment after this call and close the issue. Let's try one another. We still have about 5 minutes left. 108.584. Oh, it looks like an error on the user side because the pod is clearly pending, which basically means it does not have a node assigned, so it can't have an IP, which means it is stuck in the scheduler queue. So we can't present any information because we don't have that information there yet. So the output or the information provided by SIG by kubectl is perfectly correct. Any objections? Okay, I'll leave a comment there after this call. In that case, we should be able to handle one more. 108.668. Our random command is getting executed. Kate 121.7. kubectl edit stateful set.
Why does he have 2 minus n's in there?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Oh, I know what is most likely happening. When you specify a resource type and then after a space, the resource name, there are some issues with how we parse. Apparently the -n is being ignored, but the XYZ is being picked as the name for the SDS, or the -n is being picked, or it just ignores this. And then the namespace is always picked the last one because you can't specify multiple namespaces, always the last one. So it's possible that what happens in his case is the first namespace is being ignored, the last namespace is being picked, So he's getting added STS, all the STSs in the Kafka namespace. That's my suspicion. I could probably double check, but yeah. I see that Paco already commented that it's most likely not a bug. I'll double check what I just said, and something tells me that we will be able to close this one as well. Okay, we got last 1 minute. Any other closing comments that people want to share? Hearing none. Thank you very much all for today's call, and see you next week for our regular bi-weekly calls. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye all.